Hey, everybody, got 5 different stocks that you might want to consider if you're interested in the blockchain or Bitcoin space, crypto space. What are some stocks that are going to be somewhat correlated to that space, and kind of what does that look like? So let's dig into it. Bitcoin obviously is Bitcoin, and so we don't need to look at that one. But IBIT is the Bitcoin Trust. It is an ETF, which really just means that you can go with your Fidelity, Charles Schwab type retirement accounts. You can self-direct them, and then you can literally buy them, and it will follow the price of Bitcoin, which is kind of interesting. So if you do have exposure, if you don't have exposure rather to Bitcoin, you want to have exposure, and you don't want to have to jump through the hoops of Coinbase or KYC or anything else. You can look at something like Bitcoin. You can say, okay, Bitcoin, I want to hold it for 10 years without having to do self-custody. Cool. You could buy IBIT, and it'll pretty much follow the price of Bitcoin percentage-wise. Obviously, they've cut down the number of shares to make it, this is, in my opinion, a psychological tool. Because people say, oh, I can get Bitcoin for $36. No, you can't. It's not the same thing, but that's okay. IBIT, IBIT. Really, the next one that I'm looking at is Riot Platforms. Riot Platforms is, they are in the mining space. They're probably one of the bigger miners. But really what we see here is the white lines that you're going to see on the chart. That is essentially not this one because this is an estimate. But really these two over here, you can kind of see this is really when it started to take off. So for the 2017 bull run, when it was going bananas, definitely Bitcoin went up, as well as in October, this started moving, kind of broke out of its channel, kind of started moving, consolidating, and broke out. And oddly enough, on December 19th, it kind of topped, which oddly enough is basically the exact same time frame that Bitcoin topped. And so that happened once, and then of course it sold off, much like Bitcoin, interestingly. And then you come back over here and you really look at 2021, same thing. It kind of breaks out here, which is going to be November timeframe again, and then it's going to go up and it's going to peak kind of closer to the end of the year in 2021, and then it sells off much like Bitcoin. And so if I was to hypothesize and I was used to kind of use this this trend line here that kind of connects 2 data points, only 2 data points, so it's not exactly the sharpest analysis here, you can kind of see that we're really trading in the bottom of the range. And so it doesn't mean buy it and it's going to go up. It just means that from a risk perspective, your downside's pretty small and your upside's pretty dang big. In fact, if you were to go up to this yellow line, you're looking at about 1,500% return. So that's pretty nice. The next one that I'm looking at is Mira, which is another Bitcoin mining company. They're also humongous. Now, what's a little bit different about them is they have a track record from the past, but their track record in the past isn't relevant to what we do today because they actually completely changed business models at a certain point. And so all of this data over here is not helpful for us. But what I do see is I do see some psychological levels of when they started mining Bitcoin and kind of where that would be, and to kind of see pretty much the same thing as I've said before here. We've got kind of a double top here, following Bitcoin, mimicking Bitcoin's patterns. If we were to look at a risk profile, I'm at $16 and it could go to 50, 60, 100, something crazy. Great. Like, again, my risk to rewards definitely there. And so that's the other one. That's the third one. Backed is BKKT, I believe. Yeah. And that's not necessary. And really, this is an interesting one because they do a little bit more of like a software as a service kind of thing. They write a lot of APIs for traders. Now, this chart is just, in my opinion, insanely ugly. This is misleading. There's probably a split in here. Let me find one. Here we go. This S means split, probably something big. Yeah, 125. And so they basically, in order to make this number smaller, they increase the number of shares equally. It doesn't dilute your stock, but it does change the price. And so it's kind of hard to look at that data that way. It should adjust, and maybe it did. I haven't looked into a ton of it, but this is another one that I think is, from a software standpoint, very integrated into the crypto community. And again, when I'm looking at this thing, it looks like it's dying. And so from a buy standpoint, I'm kind of looking at these peaks and kind of how it runs up to $70. That's still a 6x from pretty much where we are right now. So again, from a risk reward standpoint, there's this much to go down, and there's a lot more to go up potentially. And so we will see. I think that's one that I'm keeping an eye on. And then Hive, I'd probably say that's my fifth one. It's the same narrative over and over and over again. Oddly enough, 2017, right? Hey, look at that. 2021. Oh, and there's two of them, just like in 2021. Kind of crazy. And then there's a big sell-off, and there's just consolidation period. Same things happening over here. So if I'm looking at this price range of 28 cents to what is essentially $3, we literally happen to be in a spot to where the low over here was $1.27, and it's kind of already peaked up a little bit to $7, $8, $6, $7, $8, something like that. And so while this is super choppy, I'm looking at the risk to reward ratio on this thing, and what is my downside? My downside is it could come down to $1, and it could go up to, a significant more larger amount. And so that doesn't mean you should buy it, but what it does is it's simply just a visualization for me to look at and say, hey, that's something interesting. Dig into that. And so that's my five stocks. If you were looking to play in the Bitcoin, blockchain, crypto related space on the stock exchange side of things, you want to use your retirement accounts to do that. Hey, there's my 5 opinions. This isn't obviously financial advice, and I wouldn't necessarily go out and buy these unless you kind of like the companies and what they're doing. And I'm going to do the same. And so happy investing, and go out there and make some money.